on behalf of the Institute for Leadership and Strategic Foresight. Welcome to So You Want to Be the Chief, a podcast for leaders.
I am really, no kidding, and I say this often, but this I really truly mean. I am honored to have my former boss, now retired Colonel Kurt Pfitzner, on the show with me today. Hey, sir, how you doing?
Doing great. Good to see you, Chief.
You
And
know,
it's been a long, long time, hasn't
it,
it?
it has been. I don't even remember when did you when I retired from active duty in '02. Now you stayed on for a while, I think.
Right. I stayed on till retired in '08.
Okay,
And you and I think our last joint assignment was up at Ramstein.
right.
You retired, what, in November of '02, and
Yep.
I left for Air War College in June, I think it was June or July of '02.
Okay.
Came up
All
there to
right.
Maxwell, and then of course you went on to do great and wonderful things. And then I stayed. Let's see, I stayed after Air War College. My goodness, I did Air Force ROTC, Deputy National Commander for ROTC. Went down to
Right.
San Antonio, and
Yeah.
then I was the Director of Education Training, and then became the Director of Staff for AFPC, and retired out of that in '08.
Right, right. And you are a prior enlisted officer. By the way, thank you so much. Those of you who are listening, please get this new book that just it's brand new, hot off the presses. It's called A Different Shade of Blue, and these are stories by retired enlisted officers, how they went on and got there to begin with, and their experiences. In
Sure.
fact, your story was so good that I put it up front. I loved it. In fact, every once in a while when I need a break and need some joy in my life, I go read that story because a great writer, sir. You need to write a book, and I will help you do that if you'd like. But great writing and great story. If I'm not mistaken, you have some connection with Texas.
Well, yes, a lot of connections with Texas, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
I went to, my dad was in the military service as well. We came over from Europe in 1969, I think it was, and ended up in Austin, Texas, and went to junior high school there, and joined the Air Force in 1976 to see the world. And my first assignment was in San Antonio for basic training. Then stayed in San Antonio for security police. Then I went to Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas. And then then I got my commission and went to Shepherd Air Force Base in Wichita Falls, Texas. And I'd like to tell people my first overseas assignment, being a newly minted Texan, was to Colorado Springs in 1986.
yeah. It would have been a different place, I'm sure. But
Yeah,
But anyway, the reason I wanted to get you on the show, and as you know, sir, this is about chiefs, helping chiefs be better chiefs. And you had
that's
seveund of them because, I mean, you had the best one of all, me, for a
without a
couple of years. But you have some experience, and the purpose of the show, sir, is especially for the new chiefs who probably don't really know how to be a chief. Back in my day, you learned way before, and you
doubt.
got beat up way before. Nowadays, we can't do that anymore. But anyway, what is your perspective on chiefs, sir? And I know when I walked into your office at Ramstein, the first thing you thought was, "Wow, I finally get to see the ruggedly handsome chief." And then I don't know what your experience was after that.
And well, my experience is really good. I mean, I've had several chiefs working for me, or I worked for several chiefs.
Yeah.
It all depends on how you looked at it. But I mean, when you become chief master sergeant, so that's the pinnacle of the enlisted career. And when I was enlisted for 2 years, 8 months, and 28 days, that was what we aspired to, because it was the pinnacle of success. It was a pinnacle of leadership for the enlisted corps. And but it didn't come without its responsibilities and its requirements. As a young airman on the south gate of Goodfellow Air Force Base in San Angelo, Texas, watching tornadoes dance across the field out there out of the south gate, you really never thought of the things that you're going to have to learn, that you're going to have to become, that you're going to have to aspire or inculcate into your career, into your mindset. But there's a lot of things that you had to think about as you went up the food chain up to that pinnacle of success. And what do you need to do to be a role model? What do you need to do to improve yourself? What values do you need to assimilate into your life to make sure that those people you will eventually lead will follow you blindly off the cliff? And that doesn't go for just the chiefs, but it goes for the officers and anybody in a leadership position as well. So there's a lot of responsibility and a lot of things that you have to pay attention to in an effort to make yourself relevant and effective as any in any leadership position, especially as a chief master sergeant.
Yeah. One of the things that I think I may have mentioned to you that's in the book, and I try to stress, particularly when I'm speaking to young new chiefs, is trust. We got to be able to try, and I mean, especially in the profession that we're in the military. I mean, and you were a cop, you're all of us, especially in the last couple of weeks, even as a military person, you got to be able to and be willing to take care of each other. You got to be able to trust that airman, that officer, that chief is going to be there to take care of you, to take a bullet for you if it gets to that point. And we always hope that it never gets to that point. But how do you develop trust between the commander, you as the commander, sir, and me as the chief? And it is a mutual thing. We both have to work at it. I work for some pretty shitty people, and I'm sure those pretty shitty people thought what a shitty chief I was. And because we never got to the point where we could trust each other for some reason, for whatever reason. How do you build trust between your chief and the commander? What do you, in your perspective?
Well, there are a lot of constants in the word trust, and when you have two people put together like you and I, when I was with the Mission Support Squadron, Darren, who was my senior enlisted advisor, or my first sergeant, and a lot of other senior NCOs who worked for me, you're usually blended together with very, very little notice, if any at all. And when you step into the office, you're faced with a blank slate. You don't know what they've gone through, whether they're trusting, whether they're trustworthy, and you've got to find out a way to bring the melding of the minds together so you can have a very profitable, very successful time as a leader and a leader. But I think when you really look at it, the first thing that you have to do is you have to create that safe environment where people can feel free, where they can feel safe about bringing their ideas, about bringing their suggestions, their recommendations. I've worked for commanders who were screamers and yellers. I do remember one time when I was a lieutenant with the 3750th Security Police Squadron at Shepherd Air Force Base. It was snowing like crazy. We very rarely ever got snow. And our police cars snow was starting to melt. They were getting mud. The wash racks were frozen. And my captain, I was a second lieutenant. My captain came out and told me, you need to wash the cars. Every shift we wash the cars. And I said, sir, it's snowing outside. It's muddy. There's things are frozen all over the place. The racks are absolutely frozen down. And he looked at me in the hallway with a bunch of enlisted folks around. And he said, listen, you little SOB, if you can't get the job done, he said, I'll do it for you. And he reached in his pocket and he said, better yet, he grabbed a couple of dollar bills, threw it at me, and he said, why don't you go wash the cars? And at that point, I was not going to go back and say, I trust you're telling me the right thing. I'm going to go ahead and wash the cars. I grabbed it, and lo and behold, the flight chief walked over there and he looked at me and he goes, sir, don't worry about it. We got it covered. And he walked out there, and I don't know how they did it, whether they took it to someone's home, whether they poured water out of the faucet and went out and washed the cars. But when we came out, and they were absolutely filthy. The uniforms were covered in dirt and snow and mud, but they did it. And it was, hopefully, I like to think of it as the environment that I had created, that they trusted that I was watching out after them, that I was covering for them, that I had their back. I didn't feel the same way with my captain. So when you go through and you're looking at the leadership as you move forward, especially as the senior leader of our enlisted corps, you've got to create that environment. They have to be able to walk in there with any problem that they have and know they're not going to be screamed at and know they're not going to be uh, barked at, and knowing that they can sit down there and have an honest adult conversation about what the resolution for the issue is or the decision. But first and foremost is creating that environment. And then there are so many other things. Everybody's got different ideas on what it takes to create a trusting environment. You have to make decisions thoughtfully. Bring in your NCOs, bring in your core, bring in the people who can help you make the decision. And you have to be consistent. You know, what's good for one is good. Now, there's situational leadership where you take what you believe to be right, true, and just, and that decision is predicated on a wide variety of of conditions that may affect that particular situation. And yeah, you may have to deviate, but for the most part, be consistent. Encourage decision making and autonomy. And there, I could go all day long. This could turn into a 4-hour podcast.
Well, and you're right, sir. That environment is key, and the atmosphere, all of that stuff that goes into it. But and again, it is mutual. And you know what's an interesting thing, or I've observed in being the follower as well as the leader, is that people know whether they can trust you. You know, you can't tell them. And I think, gosh, when I go back, I think probably every commander I worked for would tell us, "You can trust me." Well, boss, maybe not, depending on what you do, not just what you say. You know, and I remember probably and he was one of the best commanders I ever worked for, was here at the academy. He wasn't really a commander. He was the division manager or leader, whatever we called him, Russ Sojourner, one of my favorite people to work with. But we always knew when he had lost a battle because he came back. You know, you could tell he was worn. He was worn, and we'd have those conversations. Boss, you just lost, didn't you? Whatever it was that he was fighting for. Yeah, but you know what?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. We trusted him more probably than when he won because he fought for us and we knew he had fought for us. We could tell that he had fought for us, even if he lost. And anything that he asked for, I think we did. I know I did. I was willing to do whatever I had to do because I knew that I could trust him because even if he lost, he still fought for us. And that, you know, you can tell. You can tell. You don't have to. It's not like we went and did some investigating or anything. We knew that he had fought for us, and that was enough. And you know, there were. I think all of us were prior military that worked for him,
Mm-hmm.
and we knew this is the way we'd go to war with him right now. In fact, right, he's retired like me. And if he called me right now, sir, and said, "Chief, we need to go," I'll go get. I can still fit in my uniform. Let's go. So,
Yep.
God forbid. Now, I don't know that I could even get there. Like, you know, as you get older, it's tougher to get there. And I don't know that you know that yet, sir, but let me tell you that it is.
Yes, but you know, and it's really interesting. And you've heard the phrase "walk the walk and talk the talk,"
Right.
and I would add a corollary to that. And I've always felt that whole mantra of "walk the walk and talk the talk" was missing one more element. Is it's good to walk the walk. You have to do that, and it's absolutely wonderful to talk the talk. But if you don't walk the talk, that's what people are missing. They're missing out of that whole lengthy corollary is that you have to do what you say you're going to do. You've got to be able, and you stand up there because your reputation is going to precede you before you ever step in that organization. When you step in, people will have done their research. They will have called back to the previous unit. They will have talked to their friends. And when you walked into that organization, they're already going to have an attitude on what they think you are, what they think you'll do, and how supportive you're going to be to that organization. And most importantly, how successful. So if you talk the big talk, you better walk the walk. you better do what you say you're going to do. And when you do, that reputation that precedes you in that organization is going to be one of acceptance. It's going to be one of success, and it's going to be one of mutual support. And you're not going to have to spend those 3 months gauging whether or not you're going to be stabbed in the back or you're going to be shot by your boss or you're going into an organization that's got a lot of festering issues below the surface rather. So I like to think of it. It's good to walk the walk and talk the talk, but you need to also walk the talk.
Yes. And like you say, consistently, always.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that, and honesty, obviously the integrity is still one of our core values. And we need to be honest. And there are a lot of new buzzwords, authenticity and all that. Yeah, tell your people when you can't as much as when you can.
And you'll be challenged.
Oh, yeah.
Integrity. My goodness. When I was a second lieutenant, this is back to Shepherd Air Force Base. My boss was one of my bosses, I had three of them while I was there in 2 years, was a former pilot for Air Force Two. And he was a C-130 driver. And there at Shepherd, we had aircraft maintenance. They did maintenance on C-130s. And the C-130 that we had sitting out there on the ramp was, of course, a decommissioned airplane. But every plane has got a plaque on it that lists the manufacturer's data and things like that. Kind of like a car's got in the door jamb. Mm-hmm. It's where you get the VIN and things like that. That was the number 2 C-130 to ever come off the line back in the 1950s. And wow. he wanted that plaque. Yeah. And he directed me to go on night shift because I was a lieutenant. I was the OIC of law enforcement. He gave me a screwdriver and he said, "Get me that plaque." And I went out there and I had that screwdriver, and it was 2:00 in the morning. I'm standing there looking at that C-130. I couldn't do it. I just could not do it. So I went back to him the next morning. I gave him the screwdriver back. And I said, "Boss, I love you like a brother, but I can't do it. I just can't do it." And he took the screwdriver, put it in his drawer, and he said, "You pass that test."
Wow.
And I went, "Oh, my goodness." And I learned so much just by that one instance, that you always have to be on your guard. You've always got to maintain your integrity because you never know when people are going to test you, whether it was something as direct as that or something else that you're not expecting. Yeah. And most importantly, do the right thing.
Always. Yes, sir. Having said that, what should a chief not do in your perspective, sir? What's the worst thing that a chief can do?
Be inconsistent. You don't need to yell at anyone unless there's a fire. And one of the things that I found out, especially when I was in law enforcement, is my level of respect to someone to a small degree or a moderate degree was based on their language. Profanity is absolutely rampant everywhere. Yeah. And the blank bombs are used as part of normal vernacular.
Right.
And never dress down people in front of anybody else. Praise in public and counsel in private. There's nothing more demeaning to someone to be dressed down in front of their peers. There's no room for that. Yeah. No room for that. Yeah. And I would say that you could go on and name 1,000 things that you should not do, but attacking someone personally and individually, that breaks the morale and the spirit faster than anything can ever break. And it would take you 10,000 times over to repair that damage you've done at that one instant.
If you could.
And
you may not be able to. And a lot of times, sir, and I've heard some stories. In fact, I've got one in mind that and that's disrespect. That's all it is. It's just being disrespectful to
It
someone.
is.
And the more, the culture that we live in now, it's like no big thing. It's on social media everywhere. T-shirts, if that really bothers me, seeing those
Mm-hmm.
T-shirts with the F word on them and all. It's like, man, don't you have any? And to me, I'm thinking, don't you have any personal respect?
Yep.
You use that kind of language. There's better language. There's smarter language. You don't have to be an idiot. You don't. And a lot of times I think they're just wanting the attention. And you're right. They get to
Mm-hmm.
the point where they don't even realize that they're using that vernacular. And I can't. We don't have time for me to tell you the story that I have, but it gets to the point where we think, well, when I'm with my family, I won't use that language. Sure, you're not, you're a human, and it's going to happen right in front of your
It's what's
your
gonna
kid,
happen.
your sons, your grandsons, well, in front of the general. Well, and the general uses that language, so it's not a big deal, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But you say no, no. When I'm being quote professional, I won't use that language. Yeah, you're not. You can't. There's no switch. Your mind is not built that way. It's not going to switch and use a certain language with these people, a certain language. You think that that's going to happen, but one day is going to come out and it's going to be huge and it's going to be very, very disrespectful. And I don't know, sometimes when you do that type of stuff, you never regain the respect. You never do. You can try real hard. You can apologize all you want. It's gone. So you're right. You got to be professional constantly. And in the case where you're talking about hammering someone in public, and I have some, they happen to be young proteges who say, "Oh no, it's okay." No, it's not. You may think it's okay. It's not. When you disrespect someone, that will hit them. That you if you recover, and I don't think you ever recover, they will remember that forever. And take your chances if you want, but I think that's a huge thing. Don't do that, regardless of whether you're a chief or a colonel. And you know that, sir. Sometimes, okay, the general thinks, okay, now I can say whatever I want. Sure, general,
You
but
give it
you, but
one shot.
yeah, that's
Yep.
right.
And what that does is that lends back to that whole concept of trust you were talking about. Now they cannot trust that the same won't happen to them if they're in a similar situation. So they're going to avoid you like the plague. And then when you start relying on all of those other elements of leadership, communication, being a role model, your values, the teamwork, all of that will start to disintegrate because they don't trust that you're going to have their back, and they don't trust that they're not going to get dressed down, and they don't trust they're going to get swatted right in the middle of their peers. And um and you might as well just control alt delete, move on to another job
Yes, yes,
because
sir.
you've lost them.
Yeah. And on the other hand, when you do have that trust between the chief and the colonel, the boss, the commander, whatever the position it is, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. I can still remember I can count them in my hand how many of y'all I really trust. Gary Smith, you remember, I think
I
Gary
remember
Smith
Gary
was
Smith.
your predecessor. And in fact, I will have lunch with him next week, I
He's
think,
in
or
your
something.
neighborhood.
Yes, yes. And he's in the book, by the way, too.
Yes.
But that trust that we develop between the chief and the commander, there's nothing like it when you really have it. That you really have it. And I think, at least in my case, it never, you never lose it. Yeah, we're retired and we've been retired for a while, but I can always expect that if I need something, I can go to you. I can call colonels, my colonels that I work for, the generals that I work for, and they
Mm-hmm.
will take care of me. Now, that may mean that they yell at me and tell me how again, Vasquez, you're being stupid again, but I may need that, and that's okay. But especially you young chiefs out there who are about to work for an O6 or a general officer, it's a wonderful thing when you can develop that trust, that relationship that will never end. And I have a lot of friends that become friends. A lot of proteges become friends with their former bosses, and that's great. But the professional development or professional relationship that we have while we're on active duty, there's nothing like it.
You're
And
absolutely right.
God forbid we'd have to, but each of us, I think, are willing to die for the other, and that's to me the highest level
Yep.
of trust.
You're absolutely right. And you talked about the colonels and the chiefs working together. And one of the things that I found that was critically important was communication. And the communication that you should, as a chief, have with your commander needs to be like the number 2 guy in the Thunderbirds. When you're flying wingtip formation, you're watching that other airplane. You're watching what it does, and you're mirroring it, and you're flying just like this to make sure you don't run into each other. Something bad doesn't happen. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Whether it's with your troops, whether it's your peers, or whether it's with your boss, because if you fail to maintain that vector, maintain that sight picture, and you peel off, bad things will happen.
Yeah.
And then it becomes incumbent upon the commander to fix what we've messed up. And that doesn't usually bode well.
Right, right. Well, and I always try, and I still tell the youngsters, the attitude to have in that situation, I think, is I will not let you fail. Boss, I will not let you fail. And that may mean that I got to go in and tell you, boss, you're about to fail.
Yes,
and that's not always good, but you got to do it, well, and I know you were at Maxwell a few times. I was trained, if you will, by a Chief Gwaltney. I don't know what his first name is. I never knew because he was Chief Gwaltney. But anyway, just as I made chief, he said, Bob, if you want to be a good chief, you got to be willing to get you have to be willing to have your butt chewed at least once a week. And what he meant was you got to tell the boss the truth.
That's right.
And it may not go well, but you got to tell the boss the truth. And I, in fact, I was in some situations where I did tell the boss the truth, and it was not a fun day for me, but I had to do it. Boss, I will not let you fail, because if you fail, I failed. And young, especially like I said, young chiefs out there, keep that in mind. Sir, an honor to have served with you. We did some fun stuff at Ramstein, and we did some not so much fun stuff at Ramstein too. But nonetheless,
we lived through 9/11.
Yes, sir.
The USS COL.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, we did. And we were
a lot of tough stuff.
Yes, that was not fun stuff in the sense that we enjoyed it, but it was amazing. We not only did we survive, sir, I think we thrived in doing what we were doing. We're supposed to do so.
And you guys knocked it out of the park, and it's great to see just about everybody we knew from the Family Support Center grow off and do great, wonderful things. It's kind of funny. Mark DeBoga, who was the chief of the Family Support Center, ended up becoming an SES, and I ended up going back to the Pentagon and working for him in A1XT. Did that for about a year and a half, and it was kind of funny because every time I walked in, he's an SES too. I'm a GS-14, and he's calling me sir. I said, no, I'm supposed to be calling. He said, well, it'll always be that
way. Yeah, well, all good stuff, and we will never forget that. Thank you, sir, for taking the time. I know you live near a lake or live on a lake or something, and I'm probably taking away your fishing time, which is not a good thing for you Southern people. I know that. I was there a few times.
That's okay. There's a lot of fish out there. They wait every day for us. So
okay, good. Well, and I hope that Lee is doing well. What a wonderful young lady. That gosh, I see pictures of her. I got to tell you the truth because I'm your chief. Sometimes you look older. She looks the same as she did 25 years ago.
And this story is not true, but I tell it anyway. And I tell her when we got married, she only had one request. And that is to make sure that I always looked older than she did, because she's got me by 5 years. She's 5 years older than
really.
And my birthday's coming up, and I asked her, I said, how am I doing? She said, you're doing a great job.
Well, give her our best. We still remember y'all and all the good times that we had. So God bless you. Take care of yourself, sir. Take care of yourself first. Okay.
God bless
you got to take care of yourself. All right. See you again.
See you. Thank you, Chief.